How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. So today I wanted to cover Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, his article that just dropped a bomb on the Fed and the financial world for that matter. So if anybody watches the Strategy Room live stream that I do every Saturday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube, if anybody watched that, I covered the Wall Street Journal did kind of like a snippet article taking looking at just the overall, just kind of an overview, a quick overview of this much larger article that was published in the International Economy. Now, and I'll bring this up here so everybody can kind of see this article. So this is called "The Fed's New Gain of Function Monetary Policy: Overuse of Non-Standard Policies, Mission Creep, and Institutional Bloat Are Threatening the Central Bank's Monetary Independence." This article, as I said in the live stream, I wanted to do an episode covering this because it needed a little bit more time. And I wanted to express to people how monumental this article is. This is historic because for the first time, you have a Treasury Secretary that is coming out and is openly criticizing the Federal Reserve on a lot for the last 15, 16 years, and basically saying that hey, look, they have gone off the rails, they've gone off the reservation, they have absolutely manipulated the economy, and the manipulation has led to gross inequalities. It's been great for the ultra rich, but it basically has stunk for everybody else. And basically saying that, hey, look, we need, and he concludes this article by saying we need a ton of change at the Federal Reserve. And basically the Federal Reserve, and again, one of the interesting things about the article is that basically Scott Bessent says that he wants central bank independence. He doesn't want them to be, to lose that independence. But what he's also trying to get at is that the Fed is losing this independence themselves. They are doing this to themselves. If they lose their independence at the end of the day, the only one they're going to have to blame is themselves because of all of the actions that they have taken. And the fact also, too, that there's no accountability. There's no accountability there. And anybody who attempts to question the Fed is immediately shut down, and then the Fed, they wrap their blanket of independence around them and go, you can't criticize us, you can't say anything bad about us because we need our independence, and that and we're and why this is so monumental is that this points out to you that we are very quickly coming to the day when that argument is just not going to work anymore. And if we have not already gotten there. So, but anyway, and I'm not going to read through this whole article. I want to just run through, basically different segments of it. So it starts off with him basically saying, as we saw during the COVID pandemic, when lab-created experiments escape their confines, they can wreak havoc in the real world. Once released, they cannot easily be put back into the containment zone. The extraordinary monetary policy tools unleashed after the 2008 financial crisis have similarly transformed the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy regime with unpredictable consequences. The Fed's new operating model is effectively a gain-of-function monetary policy experiment. The Fed's adoption of large-scale asset purchases as a tool of monetary policy, when its traditional instrument, the overnight interest rate, was at the zero lower barrier, created severe distortions in the market with unintended consequences, and it has disturbed the Fed's unique independent role in the U.S. political system. Central bank independence is fundamental to the economic success of the United States. The Fed must change course. Its standard monetary policy toolkit has become too complex to manage, with uncertainty, theoretical underpinnings, and problematic economic consequences. Gain-of-function monetary policy must be replaced with simple and measurable policy tools to achieve a narrow mandate. Such an approach is the clearest and most effective way to deliver better economic outcomes and safeguard central bank independence over time. So in other words, this again is what he's saying here, is that he's advocating for central bank independency, but he's basically warning, if you don't change course, if you don't simplify what you're doing, go back to simpler times, as it were, you are risking your very independence. So then we get into the unconventional monetary experiments, not policy. Now, here's where I'm going to do a shameless plug. If you have not looked at or seen any of my series on the Lords of Easy Money, so this book right here, The Lords of Easy Money by Christopher Leonard, I have said it till I'm blue in the face that this book is the most important book that I have read in the last 15 years. If you understand this book, if you read this book and understand it, you're going to understand everything that's going on in the economy today, and you're going to understand exactly why we got here. But more importantly, you're going to understand why it's the Fed's fault that we are sitting where we are today. And so again, go see that series. And look, I have interviews there with Dr. Thomas Honig, who we're going to see featured here in this article here in just a minute. Dr. Thomas Honig was the central character of the book, The Lords of Easy Money. So go look at my interview that I did with him. I'll put a link to that interview at the end of this video. So again, so it gets into all of the, everything that the Fed did in the aftermath of 2008 with the ZIRP, the zero interest rate policy, the quantitative easing, the massive, printing of money. And it says right here, central bank independence is fundamental to the economic success of the United States. The Fed's new operating model is effectively a gain-of-function monetary policy experiment. So yes, I don't think he's wrong with that comparison. Unpredictable consequences in the real world. Again, he talks about how the Fed distorted the economic markets and forcing people to reach for yield and things of that nature. And then this is a very interesting piece here. So this is from progressive financial policy expert Karen Petru, documents how the Fed's pursuit of a wealth effect to stimulate the economy backfired. Unprecedented inequality is clear proof that the wealth effect is all too effective for the wealthy, but an accelerant to economic hardship for everyone else. So yes, absolutely. So she wrote in her book, Engine of Inequality, The Fed and the Future of Wealth in America, which was written in 2021. Progressive financial policy expert Karen Petru documents how the Fed's pursuit of a wealth effect to stimulate the economy backfired. Unprecedented inequality, wrote Petru, is clear proof that the wealth effect is all too effective for the wealthy, but an accelerant to economic hardship for everyone else. Economists focus on the supposed benefits of the wealth effect, in particularly odd, given that the Fed's asset purchases act more powerfully on the discount rate at which assets are valued than the stream of cash flows that underpins the asset's price. Asset owners are less likely to bring forward consumption as a result of changes in the discount rate than income growth. And to the and to the extent that they do increase consumption, the effects may reverse once discount rates are normalized. And then we get, like I said, now we go to former Kansas City Fed President Thomas Honig. The Fed's policies shifted money between the rich and the poor, and they encouraged or discouraged things like Wall Street speculation that could lead to ruinous financial crashes. Only the very wealthiest individuals own financial assets that are most directly impacted by the Fed's large-scale asset purchases. So how good has this been? You might be asking, how good has this been for the wealthy? So I give you the answer. Let's take a look at this. So this is from the St. Louis Fed database. Is one of their chart. This is net worth held by the top 1%. So we could see here let's go back to 07, 08. You're talking about trillions of dollars here. So 7.9, trillion. And now you see this kind of goes down. And now you see this absolute, just going up, 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 up. So we go from basically it doubles from right before the financial crisis in 07 to basically 7.9 trillion. And now we're up to about 13.6 trillion. Okay. Then COVID hits and then boom. Look at that. Look at that. Just like a skyscraper. Let's look at this. Look at this. Right here. We're sitting here in first quarter 2020, 12.1 trillion. And now we're all the way up here to $22.1 trillion. So it has doubled in 5 years. Doubled in 5 years. And when you go back, it has, more than quadrupled in the last 15 since the Fed started meddling. So the Fed's policies have been extremely beneficial to the ultra rich. They have made the rich, stupider than beyond their wildest dreams. So, of course, the ultra wealthy are loving what the Fed is doing. They have no complaints about what the Fed is doing, but it is what it has done to the bottom 50% of the economy. The bottom 50%, they cannot, they can't live today. They can't afford anything. Can't buy a house. Like this is the problem here. So then we continue to go down. So, the rich got richer, and buoyed by its perceived success at combating the financial crisis, the Fed extended its liquidity tools into uncharted territory. Monetary contagion hits the real economy. Institutional growth at all costs. The Fed is not funded by appropriations from Congress. Instead, it is funded out of earnings on its securities portfolio, or in the absence of such earnings, by printing money. Oh, what is that? Printing money. And again, let's think about that for a second. So how is the Fed doing in its own securities portfolio? Well, the Fed has lost $235 billion in the last 2 years. So it's not making it, it's losing a tremendous amount of money at the moment. And as far as their securities go, they have what's called an unrealized losses in their bond portfolio of $1 trillion. So they have basically a potential $1 trillion hole in their balance sheet. So not doing too good. Not doing too good at the moment over there at the Fed. So, and then we have, the Fed breaking with its tradition of political neutrality, publicly calls for the stimulus and then accommodated it with ultra loose monetary policy. The Fed's adoption of unconventional tools during the 2010s pushed the effective nominal interest rate to as low as negative 3% by May of 2014. Unconventional monetary policy threatens the health of the body politic. And then it gets into, even in June of 2022, with inflation in full swing, the Fed forecast a peak rate of 3.8% at the end of 2023, followed by a decline. In reality, the rate has remained above 4% since December of 2022. Regulatory overreach, conflicts of interest, and threats to independence. The Fed's unconventional monetary tools disrupted an essential source of feedback, the financial markets. By failing to deliver on its inflation mandate, the Fed allowed class and generational disparities to worsen. And then I'm just going to read to you the conclusion here. So the Federal Reserve's heavy intervention in financial markets over recent decades has led to a series of unintended consequences. While these unconventional tools were introduced to address extraordinary circumstances, their efficacy in stimulating economic activity remains unclear. But they have clearly produced severe distributional outcomes across American society, undermined the Fed's credibility and threatened its independence. At the heart of the Fed's independence lies its credibility and political legitimacy. Both of these tenets have been jeopardized by the Fed's decision to expand its role beyond its traditional mandate and engage in what amounts to gain-of-function monetary policy. These actions have eroded the institution's insulation from political pressure, risking its ability to function as an independent entity. Looking ahead, it is essential the Fed commit to scaling back its distortionary impact on markets at a minimum. This likely includes the Fed only using and then halting unconventional policies like QE and true emergencies, and in coordination with the rest of the government. It also likely requires an honest, independent, and nonpartisan review of the entire institution and all of its activities, including monetary policy, regulatory policy, communications, staffing, and research. We now face not only short and medium-term economic challenges, but also the potentially dire long-term consequences of a central bank that has placed its own independence in jeopardy. To safeguard its future and the stability of the U.S. economy, the Fed must reestablish its credibility as an independent institution focused solely on its statutory mandate of maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. And I think Scott Bessent hit it out of the park with this. And I would love to see a debate. If Scott Bessent, let's do Scott Bessent versus Jeremy Powell. Let's have this national debate. Let's make it national. Let's give these guys, a couple hours. Let's give them 2-3 hours to make their case. And let's break Jeremy Powell. He can bring his army of PhDs from the Fed. He could bring we can reunite the three amigos. He could get Janet Yellen. He could get Ben Bernanke. He could get all of them. Let's talk about what these three did over the last 15 years and how badly they have hurt our economy. I would love to see this debate. I would love to see that. You bring everything you got, bring everything you want. Let's see it, because I guarantee you that if Scott Bessent had a chance to provide his case, let's get Thomas Honig up there. Let's get Christopher Leonard up there. Let's get the Lords of Easy Money out there. Let's have this debate. I think that there is nothing healthier than to have this open and honest debate about what the Fed has done the last 15 years. And let's put it out there. Let's put it out there for everybody to see, and then let people decide. Let the U.S. citizens decide whether they think the Fed has really done a horrible job or not. But again, I that won't happen, because again, the Fed just they don't want to actually try to defend this, because they can't defend it. It's not defendable, because we have the ability of looking back on the last 15 years and seeing the outcomes of what their policies have brought upon us. So and I think a part of it too is a cultural issue. It's the elitist attitude of the Fed, of that. Hey, we don't need. We are the geniuses. We are the masters of the universe. We don't need to answer to you plebes and you peons out there. You fools. You just absolute you cretins of people that think because you might have studied the economics a little bit and read a few books that you could possibly challenge us and our amazing intellect. That's a big part of the problem here. But anyway, as I was saying, this article, again, it's historic, it's monumental. Take some time. Go look this article up. You can find the PDF of doing a simple Google search. I will attach a link to it in the description down below. Go check this out. Go look at it, review it. I think you will find it if you read this stuff all the time, may not be anything shocking or surprising in here for you. It wasn't for me. But if you don't look at this stuff all the time, and that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for that this reaches people who don't look at this stuff all the time. If you look at this, I think you will find some stuff that will be very surprising and very eye-opening and very enlightening. So, like I said, go out and give it a chance. And if you haven't checked out my Lords of Easy Money series, you have to watch it. Watch that series. Watch my interview with Dr. Thomas Honig. Read the book, The Lord of Easy Monies by Christopher Leonard. It will open your eyes. So, all right, with that being said, I will wrap up by saying if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, and I would love to hear your comments on this one. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has a great day out there. I will see everyone again real soon. Thank you for listening. Take care.